What is up, guys? Welcome into the Creed of Crypto podcast. How you doing? I am one half of your host, Boi Crypto. I have here with me, as always, my friend and co-host, Crypto Ewok. We have a great show for you tonight. As you can see by the thumbnail, PulseX will definitely be something that we talk about after this recent huge run-up in the PulseChain ecosystem over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, we're in the midst of a bit of a dip right now, which is already maybe starting to round off, it looks like. But PulseX just absolutely killed it in this ecosystem over the last couple of weeks. So we're going to revisit some people's asinine targets for that asset before we did get in, the launch of PulseChain. We're going to talk about that tonight and more. We have a poll question for you guys. If you are buying anything on this dip, which I did earlier as well, are you buying Pulse, PulseX, Hex, or other, like some kind of meme coin leverage on Pulse in some way? Let us know. Hit us up. Smash the like on your way in. If you support real DeFi, if you support PulseChain in this ecosystem, support our channel as well. Really appreciate you guys being here tonight. But hit us up with questions and comments. And Ewok, how are you? How are you feeling about everything this evening?
Feeling good. I'm enjoying this last bit of dip, which we, hope is short-lived, but trying to get a couple last minute buys in, shots like shopping before Christmas, right?
Basically, yeah. Yeah. And, I've seen a couple, we're going to get into this, but I've seen a couple people say this on Twitter, and I couldn't agree more. And it's funny because we've been so far removed from the last bull market. Like these dips, instead of feeling like, oh shit, am I catching a falling knife? Which, maybe you do a little bit. I understand that. But with the way this market is now, it's much more like, okay, what cash do I have on the sidelines? It's ready. Time to get in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just because of how winds have kind of changed here. So, feels good for sure. So are you guys buying? Let us know in the chat. We would love to hear from you. We got a lot to get to tonight. Let's start off real quick with, it's going to be an interesting combo tonight, but with BTC and ETH, because we have been seeing a big sell-off over the course of today. We saw it get below 40K. I think it was even below 39 into the 38s BTC, that is, at some point today. Inevitably. I mean, you and I kind of talked about this, Ewok, but after the ETF announcements and everything a couple of weeks ago, where everybody's like, oh yeah, it's going to be so bullish, I can't wait. We're seeing this sell off now. The ETFs, the chart's going to be the chart. I don't think the ETFs were really anything we were all that ever concerned about in terms of what the chart would do. But we're pretty much seeing it react the way that we thought it would after this ETF announcement. If you can go back maybe almost a month on these streams, at least a couple of weeks, and see where we were talking about at least getting back to this 38K level, maybe mid 30s, maybe even down to the low 30s. I know the Axis Alive stream we did right at the beginning of the year, we talked about that. And here we are getting into the 30s anyway. I think there will be more downside for BTC here over the next couple of months into the halving. But yeah, what do you make of this move right now? And we're also seeing, I saw on Twitter today, proof basically that Grayscale is dumping some of this BTC on retail's heads, now that they have gotten in because of these ETFs. But yeah, what do you think? I mean, what do we see BTC do here in the short term? And do you think we retest that 30K level? What do you think for the next few weeks and months?
Yeah, I think we can get close. Don't forget the FTX stuff is starting to liquidate as well. And they have a nice little chunk of reserve that they need to sell off. So, yeah, I mean, I could see it getting down into this, like you said, anywhere between 30 and 35. There, when you look at this last buy from 31 up to, 34-ish, there's not a whole lot in there, and they, like you said, we've said it before, a lot of times when they make massive run-ups like this one right here, it went from basically 30 all the way up to 35 in one candle. So not a lot of resistance. It did pull back, and I think that daily candle closed about 33, but still there's a lot of room there that stuff didn't get filled. And it was a huge support back here in this area. It was a lot of sideways movement for, a good month and a half. So, yeah, I think it could easily test. And if it gets down into this level at 33, it could fall all the way to 30 pretty easily. There's not a whole lot there stopping it. Probably a lot of liquidity set up or limit orders set up to buy in that area as well. But it could trickle down there pretty hard. So, it's really going to depend on who's selling, who's liquidating at this point. Like you said, Grayscale, we know they're selling off, and the FTX stuff coming out. When is Mount Gox stuff coming out too? It's been released.
We were literally talking about that on this show in 2021. I remember us doing podcasts in the fall of 2021.
It's crazy, but it will hit the market at some point. We just don't know when. But I think the big ones that we have to worry about right now are, like you said, Grayscale and FTX, because they've got a lot to sell. The halving coming up, it always makes a nice little pullback before it really starts to do its run up. So, yeah, I'm expecting anywhere in that range, 37 to 31, probably.
Yep, I think we could probably oscillate there for a bit, and I haven't really. It's weird, with the way Twitter X, whatever you want to call it, does work. Just kind of the silos that you end up getting put in because of who you follow and stuff. But I mean, I've been in more of a PulseChain silo, obviously, for a while now. But I wonder what regular crypto Twitter is making of some of this right now. I imagine some people freaking out a bit.
Yeah. But another weird thing to look at those, I was just pulled up the dominance, which I didn't look at before. And it's gone from, well, I mean, these charts aren't, I guess it's 51.1 to 51.8, almost 52%. So it's making a climb, which is weird when there's as much of a pullback as there is. You know what I mean? It's kind of a, it's kind of misleading indicator, maybe. I don't know.
Well, on the show last week, we were looking at this, and it was basically right at the bottom of that big red candle down. And I think that this is, just some kind of short-term stuff. Like we just had this significant dip in the market today. So I think seeing that BTC dominance tick up a bit today kind of makes a little bit of sense. But I do think we'll get, I don't call it whatever you want, alt season, whatever. I do think we will get, as BTC sits around here in the 30s a while, I do think we'll see the alts start to come up. I think that's probably a short-term thing we're seeing right there. But I think we're going to be here for a little while. So, I know people were super bullish on the ETFs, I guess, or something like that. But, with BTC being up in the 48K, almost 50K area, I mean, basically warning signs everywhere. I mean, it was like that was going to probably be a local top, and here we are down here. So, and even now, I mean, we've got a lot of room. I mean, it's up over 40K again now. I don't think we're going to stay here for too long. But let's turn our attention to our ecosystem, which people probably care a little bit more about. Pulse has dipped over the last couple of days, and it's so far, now that it's rounding up where it is at the moment, kind of maybe proving out what a lot of people have hoped. So, I mean, we've seen it dip down to the SAC rate of 0001. We went a little bit below that earlier today. Actually, I woke up to us being below SAC rate just a bit this morning, I saw. PulseX is at the moment at 40423. It had dipped below 4 a little bit ago. The combined hexes sit at about 2.4 cents or so, 2.5 cents at the moment. So, and it was up over 3 cents here over the last couple of weeks. So, when you have colossal moves like we just had over the last few weeks in this ecosystem with significant whale wallets buying and all these things, lots of attention coming to this ecosystem, this is what you're going to have happen. And I think you are a great person to talk to about this, Ewok, because, you've lived multiple cycles here now and seen, even in a bull market, for as bullish as everybody has been this last couple of weeks, which, why am I bullish? Because the price is going up. But for as like the great as the vibes have been the last couple of weeks, it's like, okay, now we have this pullback. And we said at the top of the show, I mean, neither one of us obviously are like, oh my God, what's happening now? What do I do? Or whatever. It feels like a good dip. But people do forget, though, or maybe it's their first rodeo, that these kind of dips are going to happen throughout the bull market. And Hex did more significant dips than this in its first cycle. So talk a little bit about that, if you would, and then we can kind of look at the Pulse chart and everything here too.
Yeah, maybe I should pull up this chart. And this isn't even all of it. This is only May of 2020. So this is missing. Let's see if they still have. Uniswap V1. Yeah. So this is the entire chart from Hex back in the day, and it made multiple dips like we're making right now. So, if you're not used to big dips like this on the way up, get used to it. I
Right.
remember seeing how many times, even just when you blow some of these up, from the time of launch down to the bottom, it was 85%, right? On the first one. And,
Wow.
you know, that one. And then you take a look at this one was another 75%. And then, we got up here, pulled back a little bit. There's another 60%. I mean, these charts don't really show it and don't do much, visual, but there were some healthy pullbacks. And then you had this one that came all the way down, another 70%. So, and then I think this one right in here was around big payday, which was also enormous. So you leading up to big payday, and that one pulled 86% down. So, these things are healthy, and we still did it 10,000x. So, just keep that in mind when you see a dip. It's a buying opportunity, a consolidation period. It's quite healthy. I hate the fact that, we get green candles and then all of a sudden get a red candle and everybody's back at each other's throats. That's the one thing I don't like about it. When the green candles are coming, everybody's in a good mood and, celebrate. And, we forget how many times that on the way up that this did this. So, and it made it healthier for that reason. Big whales taking profits, maybe too early. Maybe that's all they needed. Maybe that's all they wanted. And that's fine. But if you really want to get the gains, you've got to be there throughout the dips as well. So it's healthy. I don't mind it. And like I said, people need to use it as a opportunity to pick themselves up a little bit more if you don't have quite enough yet.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think Jenkins said it on Twitter today, Daddy Jenkins now. But he was talking about, like, if you guys are still getting sucked into the drama and stuff like that on Twitter with the vibes of the market now and not paying attention to the market, then you are not going to do well. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's just no real room for any of that anymore. I mean, if that's what you want your life to be about, I guess so. But, there's just too much good stuff to focus on to really get into some of that right now. But yeah, really interesting to see that with Hex. I mean, like, unbelievable pull. I mean, 80% is nothing to sneeze at. Like, some tokens go down that far in the bear market, and that's their low. So the fact that we're going to see that, go ahead. I was going to see if you wanted to pull up the Pulse chart, but if you wanted to look at another part of the Hex chart here.
No. I'm just looking at it and reliving the memories.
Yeah. Yeah. As you scroll through, it is funny how you can do that once you put in time with the chart. Like you remember seasons and what you were doing at the time and stuff.
Remember certain times, even like that big payday and how it fell. And, and then we got to, I think it was a New Year's Eve stream that Hexo and those guys were doing. It was a 24, maybe it was even a 48-hour stream. I think it was 24, whatever it was. But we made it all the way back up to 2 cents and hit an all-time high there. So,
yeah,
just from November back up to December, like the December 31st, went all the way back up to 2 cents. I just remember lots of those fun times and all-time highs and, how people were. And then when it pulled back, it was like, oh crap, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah.
And then we would go on to make, Hex doubled. I think it was an average of like 46 or 48 days. Every 48 days, it doubled in price on its run up. So it was just, there was so much emotion. And then, the pullbacks as well on top of it. So yeah, it was just pretty crazy to look at it and kind of relive it. But you wanted to look at Pulse, you said?
Yeah, if you want to just pull up Pulse, I like to just use it as kind of the engine, obviously, of the ecosystem. But so I mean, you can see obviously just I can't even really call it meteoric yet, but the rise anyway that we had here over the last couple of weeks, just blowing through sack rate. You did call So far, anyway, I guess Ewok, you did call that one when we were asked a couple of weeks ago, like whether we think. I said that I think we'll sit there at sack rate for weeks. I mean, we pretty significantly blew by it for a few days. Now we've dipped back to it now, so I mean, we got to put more time in here to see which one of us is right, I guess. But if we bounce off this today and continue this, I mean, it's rather nice so far how we've bounced off of it here. We've
Yeah.
basically just taken the course of today to bounce off of it. But what are you seeing here? I mean, I don't know. I feel like we could maybe still get more pullbacks here. I think we could still go, and sit around sack rate for a bit here. But what do you make of this? And also it's just like, how much of it is just that a huge injection of money just might come into this ecosystem, and
Well,
you throw the chart out the window a little bit.
sure. I mean, you're having a nice little pullback. It did hit sack rate and used it as resistance. So, as of right now, that's a good sign. Hopefully, we continue this little momentum up, get a little higher, and we'll have another pullback. It could even double. I think we could get up into this 0.00, double the sack rate, which is 3 zeros and a 2, before we have another considerable pullback. It all really depends who's coming in the system, which wallets are playing which games, and which whale is going to make the determination that says, I'm just going to buy a shitload, run it up, and leave everybody behind that was waiting for a better price. Because a lot of traders will do that. They'll play these little miniature games, and then all of a sudden they're waiting for it to go a hair lower, and it just rockets up, and they get left behind, which means they've got to buy back in higher, and it happens again and again. So, yeah, it's I think it's solid. We saw a couple of days, 3 days of 1, 2, 3, 4 days of red. Now we're getting that consolidation, and even if we chop around sideways a little bit, which we may, but I don't think too long. I think, by the end of this month, we probably start running up again. It could be a sizable gain, and that's only, we're only 7 days away from the end of the month. So it's a week.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you. I think we'll probably sit around here for a bit, but it's certainly, I mean, the vibes are just that you want to load up right now, really. So,
This is the weekly candles, so paints a little bit different of a picture, but this green one is pretty nice.
Yeah, it definitely is. All right. Well, hey, looking good. We'll continue, obviously, to monitor that. And later in the show, and Richard, we'll probably get a bit to your question here in a bit. We want to talk a little bit more in detail about PulseX and long-term visions of what that asset could do here over the course of this cycle and maybe multiple cycles. So we may get to the other tokens there as well. Try to shy away from doing like specific price calls about something in the bull market or anything like that. Despite having a PulseX 14,000X on the thumbnail tonight, which is something people have said about it before. So I thought it'd be funny to revisit that anyway and see where we think it will go. So if you guys are enjoying the stream so far, do us a favor and hit the like. We appreciate all of you guys being here. We do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Real quick, Ewok. So we got some SEC stuff that we want to talk about because, hey, they're corrupt, they're incompetent, they're getting their asses spanked basically all over the crypto sphere. Specifically right now, this judge in the Coinbase case. So this just kind of hit the courtroom last week. There was lots of stuff all over Twitter. What's his name? Meet Kevin, I think, unfortunately, was the one live streaming it. But we saw a lot of great comments, and I'm sorry that I don't remember the judge's name, but lots of great comments from the judge in that case who really grilled the SEC. And we're going to get to Nuclear Herbs, great follow on Twitter, obviously in his own right, talking about other SEC dealings in his stream with Corey Costa the other day. We're definitely going to acknowledge that a bit because it was fantastic. But he mentioned how, and other people have said this too, this judge in this Coinbase SEC case is just so prepared. Like extremely prepared, interested in the case, and I think it's a female, knows her stuff.
Yes.
She seems very well prepared, questioning both sides rather than hearing each's argument first. So didn't even listen to like opening arguments or anything, and not in an arrogant way, but because she had an understanding of the case and decided to move on to questioning. The judge had 14 pages of questions ready. I read, understood the terminology and the technology, which that's a huge thing. I mean, you don't want to get in some of these courtrooms with these things right now with somebody who doesn't know shit about any of this stuff, which unfortunately is kind of what we're dealing with some of the governments. But anyway, this case will likely continue forward to discovery and move on. But Coinbase, at this point, likely the favorite, since the SEC complaints are typically, lacking, as we know personally, and they are the plaintiff after all. So the whole thing could be fixed if Congress kind of just had legislation here. But some of the news that you are seeing out from this case, what do you make of it? Because I tell you what, it's just more and more bullish stuff. I feel like for anybody that has an issue with the SEC in the crypto space. So what can you kind of add in that maybe I didn't see, or what are your thoughts on this so far?
Well, so I know that day specifically, I was working from home, working remotely, and I actually listened to almost all of it, like probably 85, 90%. And one of the things that stood out to me, I think is it Judge Ito or something like that? I think is her name. I think anyway, one of the things that she had said was that Senator Cynthia Loomis, had done an amicus brief and submitted it, and basically said, you might want to stay away from this, because there was a lot of things written in it that basically stated, until the SEC gets their stuff together and starts setting some sort of formalized rules, that was her advisement. She should probably stay away, and I was impressed how read up she was, and she had definitely done her homework, to the point of when she was questioning the guys from Coinbase, she kind of led them a couple times to answer questions where it kind of painted the SEC into a corner. I forget one of the specific ones, was something to do with when a customer buys, do they have recourse or something like that, or the ability to object the sale anyway? And the answer is no. And that's one of the big things with an investment contract, is you can kind of go back on it if something doesn't work out, the way it's supposed to. So she kind of led them in that direction, which I found interesting. And I forget, there was another one. I can't even remember what it was about now, but she did it twice that I remember. And just kind of, it was one of those aha moments where the lawyer was like, oh, wait, no, what I mean? Because he realized what she was doing. So kind of interesting, kind of wish, Richard Hart had this judge, because she seems very up to date on what's going on, trying to classify all these things, basically stated that the Howey test is pretty outdated. This thing was written in the 1920s, I believe. Said so herself, is like, does this even require something different? Should there be something different? Why is the Howey test being used 100 years later for things that they would have never in their wildest dreams imagined at that point, being a digitalized currency? And so I was just very impressed with her knowledge overall, with the homework that you could tell that she did. And I just hope that I hope that the judge that Richard and his lawyers get is also done enough to read up on it and make decisions like that, essentially.
Yeah, that's going to be Judge Amon, and we'll get to her a little bit here when we talk about the nuclear herbs in Corey Costa's stream, which was fantastic the other night. But the judge in this Coinbase case is actually Judge Failla, Failla. But yeah, I did see her comment. I mean, her specifically talking about like, well, how can the Howey test roll on something like this when it was not a thing? I mean, there was not even internet, of course, when that was created. So,
Right.
quite different times. And I'm with you 100%. Yeah, the more judges come correct like this and kind of know this technology and what's going on in some of the background, the better we'll be. And I mean that for all of crypto, and really
Sure.
want that from any judge in any case. But the SEC, and that goes to the thing you and I have been talking about on this show for months, is that these judges aren't stupid. They've been out there. They read the news. They know what the SEC has been doing. They know their track record, how much they've been losing, and judges get pissed off whenever their time is wasted. I mean, that is
Yeah.
something that I think is pretty uniform.
Yeah.
You know, if you look
For sure.
around
Yeah.
just courts of law, I mean, like, and the SEC are the time wasters here. I mean, they're the ones that are, they're the plaintiff in all these cases. They're the one filing these suits and then showing in their complaints that they don't even know what they're complaining about, or their details are shit,
Yeah.
And judges don't take kindly to that, because they're already backed up.
Exactly. One of the things she brought up too was staking. I don't know if you caught that part or not.
I'm not sure.
But she said, isn't staking kind of like putting it in a savings account? She's like,
I think you mentioned that to me.
what's the difference? I thought that was interesting too. So, she definitely studied. So
yeah,
like you said, she skipped the whole arguments and went straight to questions. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, it's going really well though. And I mean, we'll continue to monitor that. But I mean, again, it's just been all crypto versus the SEC here for the last year or so. So we'll continue to monitor that one. And it's obviously a huge benchmark for the industry. I mean, Coinbase obviously being the most used exchange in the United States anyway.
Right.
So moving on to speaking of that dreaded 3-letter agency and their attempt to screw with actual DeFi and Richard Hart. The other day, man, what a great stream. I think it was Sunday night. Yeah. Nuclear Herbs, the attorney on Twitter that we all kind of follow for different, advice, not advice, but different ideas about what may be going on with this case. He was on with Corey Costa. It was a great stream by those gentlemen. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the updates we've seen there and their conversation. But basically there is a, total timeline for this thing. RH's attorneys basically submitted the motion to dismiss. Well, no, not the actual motion, but the letter, the timeline has been agreed to by the two sides. So their motion to dismiss is due in April, RH's attorneys. Reply by the SEC is due in August, and then oral arguments in October for both sides. So, hey, that basically computes to like this year. Not much is really going to happen. We don't have anything to concern ourselves with. I mean, I don't think we really do anyway, but, yeah, you can watch along the way and see what the motion, we know what's going to happen. The motion to dismiss is going to be filed. Probably see some interesting things from it to see what all the angles and further detail that Richard's attorneys are taking and everything. Then you'll see an SEC week comeback argument in August, much like they just did with these letters we're seeing go back and forth. And then October might be a little bit interesting. But basically this year, no reason to even think about this thing. We're basically all in the clear for 2024. And I think we will be for the rest of this ecosystem's livelihood, really, when it comes to these people. But nothing really big until the fall. So anyway, basically nothing to think about for this year. Nuclear Herbs, I wanted to bring up a bookmark tweet I had of his, but his stream with Corey, I just want to set you up for this, Ewok, because I know you watched it too. I watched the repeat of it yesterday. But he said that, hey, he thinks that Richard's legal team is stellar. And if he had, the money that RH has, it's exactly the kind of team he would assemble. He said that April the 8th is the date when the motion to dismiss will officially get filed, because that's the date that they chose. They're not going to do it before then and give the SEC more time. And Nuclear Herbs also personally really liked in their letter about the motion to dismiss the Rule 12B argument, which was that RH has no contacts or affiliation with whatever quote unquote New York people they're talking about, referring that somebody within Uniswap might be located there, and at least one investor is, which is really been an interesting thing all along. Like basically just jurisdiction, like the fact that, somebody within Uniswap or that worked at Uniswap lives in New York, at least one investor lives. It's just basically to get the case to New York where they wanted it to go. Yeah, I have more to get to with his stream, but yeah, so far what I've said to you, what are your kind of reactions, and what did you think about the stream overall?
Well, overall, I thought it was really good. He brought up a lot of good points. One of the overall takes that I got from this, and this is more so of an opinion that I formed, is that anybody at this point that's upset or worried about SEC stuff, it tends to lead me to believe that they're a short-term holder. They're not in this for the long term anyway. And I think they just want short-term gains and get out. You know what I mean? This is going to be a long, drawn-out process. And I think, people are always asking for predictions on price. Well, you've got to include time. Like Ethereum did a 14,000x. Yes, but it took 6 years. So are you willing to wait that long, for something similar? Because this could do, very similar gains. So it's just one of the things that led me to believe when I was watching and seeing some comments come in, and how they were just so concerned and upset and worried about it. And for me, it was more of a sense of relief that this guy, like you said, he did talk about the dream team, the money being spent, and
Right.
The normal average person could not afford to fight something like this. So, that's why a lot of judgments get sent out. He also mentioned that, they can't go for more than what they've already really asked for, which was what, $12 million? And he's
basically
probably spending triple, quadruple that on his lawyers, I would guess. So, the worst that's going to happen is a settlement that comes to that. It's a civil case. He mentioned that a couple times. There is no there's no criminal case. It's all civil. So, all these people that are like, Richard's going to go to jail, Richard's on the run, Richard's all that stuff can be thrown out. I just thought it was overall a very bullish sentiment. He didn't say much that we hadn't heard, but there was just a lot of informational things. You know what I mean? It wasn't. I don't think there was any real aha moments for me anyway, but it was just very informative.
It definitely was, and I did think it was interesting though. Like I was talking about the whole jurisdiction thing and nuclear herbs really liking that they went after that angle, because he followed up with like just to see. I mean, we're talking about how weak the SEC's arguments with everything that they do. Basically, part of their rebuttal, if you will, and their letter after seeing the letter about a motion to dismiss. Regarding like, what are you talking about in New York? He doesn't even live in the United States. How do they have the jurisdiction to do this? The SEC's response mentioned that he's made YouTube videos that people there have seen. I mean,
so what?
Yeah, I don't know how. It's a stretch. I just feel, we've all. I think that's one of the top 2 or 3 things, basically universally, since this thing came down, that people have been like, "What in the hell are they talking about here?"
Right.
That's really been one of the sticking points. Like, how do you have the jurisdiction to even bring this case here?
Right. And the one thing we don't know too is did that investor, and it's obviously the one that filed the complaint, right? Cleo was whatever that.
It's just, I don't know. Some people try to protect the identity, and you just go right at it.
I don't care.
I don't really care. I mean, he's tweeting about this shit all the time. I mean, he basically enters a new ecosystem. He's like, oh, he's into Zen, and now he's into Titan X, and then next thing you know, Jake Sharp's, like then he's got like Jack Levin heard investors by this, and then he's reporting them to the SEC or something like that.
Well, the dude shows up in, I've heard several Twitter spaces where he shows up and he's just I don't know, just ridiculous. So he deserves the flack he gets. But anyway, we don't know. When did he invest? Did he invest in the adoption amplifier? Well, if that's the case, that wasn't in Uniswap. That was, something completely different.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that aren't really known and that could be argued to say that about the jurisdiction. We don't know. Could have bought it on another exchange too, because very early there were a couple different things out there that you could buy hex. I forget, one was Saturn something. It was weird, and I remember the guy, the other BitConnect dude, Craig. I remember he was
Oh,
pushing this one platform very early, and it wasn't Uniswap and it wasn't the adoption amplifier. So, there were a couple of things out there. So who knows where that person bought the hex? If Uniswap played a part, maybe it did, but again, that becomes a secondary market, and those have different rules too. So
mhm.
just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah. Last thing that kind of caught my eye that Nuclear Herbs mentioned was that he did believe that the amicus brief can definitely help in this case. And you did mention it, and I didn't follow up. But yeah, on the Coinbase one too, they have
Yeah,
an amicus brief there too that I think the judge has already, she allowed it into the case already, didn't she?
right.
And has
She did.
acknowledged it. Yeah.
And Nuclear Herbs said, hey guys, maybe you guys should reach out to Cynthia Loomis, and ask her to write one for you. It can't hurt. We have time, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, she was on one of Discourse Syndicate shows with Kinetics at one point,
Oh,
I believe,
interesting. I'll look it up while you're
or
talking.
RG. So there is a little bit of a history there. We do have the amicus brief that's already filed with the 47. What are we up to now? 47,000 signatures.
I'd imagine even
Um,
more than that now, but yeah.
and maybe even if she just kind of passes it along, if she doesn't have the time to write her own, but signs it and, kind of, I don't want to say sponsors it, but says, hey, look what's going on here. I'm going to put my name on this and send it to you on behalf of the Hexagon, Pulsecan community, whatever. That's a possibility as well, because I know that one was very well written, likewise. So
Yeah.
he recommended that we could, attempt to go see if she would be willing to do that. Did you find
Yeah, that
anything?
would not specifically on there. I did see he had a different government official or something named Cynthia on though, strangely enough. But that doesn't
Maybe
mean
that's what I'm
that she
thinking of.
wasn't. Doesn't necessarily mean she wasn't. I just didn't see it here. But yeah, I
What was
mean, she
her name?
certainly.
Which Cynthia
I
did you
forget the
find?
last. I already X'd out of the tab. It was Cynthia something. It definitely was not Loomis.
Okay.
But yeah, but yeah, that would be phenomenal to get that in the hands of somebody like her, or really anybody. I mean, that's the cool thing. And I mean, Richard's attorneys are one thing. I mean, they're his attorneys, so
Yeah.
putting some suits and ties to this whole thing, I think helps some people who are not within crypto and don't understand that, like, you know, a somebody who's created something that looks and acts like Richard does is actually more so what you want instead of the button-up suit and ties.
Right.
But I think it is interesting to put, not that there isn't any, but in their eyes, more legitimacy to this kind of stuff, to explain it a little bit better. Gary Funding Jim talks about it all the time, and like, bridging over to talk to the Cardones and stuff like that. They need it's like, who are you talking to? You have to understand what it is they want, what they understand, and how to link that bridge from an ecosystem like this to that person in terms of understanding. So, yeah, to get an amicus brief written or in her hands would be awesome. But just the fact that we are seeing another precedent here with an amicus brief in the Coinbase case that could help them out as well. I would think an amicus brief in this case would maybe even be more helpful. I mean, who the hell am I? But to me, it's kind of like, this Coinbase is Coinbase. That's a huge institution. It's been around for, 3 cycles now. Everybody knows who Coinbase is. Richard Hart, there may be a lot of people within crypto that, because of the, kind of blacklisted nature of these tokens and everything, still don't actually even know who he is really,
Right.
or aren't that familiar with this ecosystem. So I think having an amicus brief with that many people could be really impactful for us. So
I agree.
yeah, we'll see. But that was a great stream by those guys. Shout out to Corey for always having interesting guests on from all different walks of life. Axis, of course, who was in the chat tonight, was just on there a little bit ago that I checked out. So kudos to those guys as well. We're going to move on here to what's been going on price-wise in the ecosystem and what we may be looking at in a longer time horizon. So if you guys are enjoying the show so far, smash the like for us, support Real DeFi. We appreciate all of you guys being here for sure. What was it? I think Richard's question a little bit ago that we can kind of talk about is, long-term prices for this ecosystem. We'll get there in a moment. I wanted to ask you, though, and this seems like such old news now, and it's already been happening for a couple of weeks, Ewok, but, more movement from the OA wallet with it. Oh, well, this was an interesting one last week. So within Hex, we saw from the OA wallet large amounts sold and then bought back from the OA wallet within Hex. And, it was kind of like, what is going on here? Just big moves in and out. People speculated like, is it some kind of market maker type tactic or something? But, I guess at this point with how much goes on in crypto, it kind of has already flown under the radar a little bit. But what did you make of that last week? I saw that floating around out there for a bit.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought was going on as well. It was a market maker. Let's buy it up. Maybe it was to increase volume a little bit. Maybe seeing what kind of limit orders were out there, single-sided, whether, if there's any single-sided liquidity, how fast it would eat through it. Sometimes they do it to make a green candle to see if there's any kind of repercussion. How many people are going to FOMO in after that? Maybe it was to kind of gauge sentiment. There's a couple different things that it could have been. And obviously, we don't know. They didn't say, obviously, why they did it. But, it was very interesting. Sometimes, like I said, you can manipulate markets with a couple large buys like that. You could take a chunk, buy it, let it go up, and then place another order right underneath there, create the sell, and then keep doing it in chunks. So there's ways to manipulate, and maybe that's what it was too. But again, it didn't appear that way. It didn't appear only because there was a buy and then fairly immediate sell right afterwards. So maybe I would like to hear Axis's thoughts on it. If he's still in the chat, what he thought was going on there, because, I'm not really the TA guy. I can look at a chart without, and kind of see resistance, levels and support levels, things like that. But I'm not fully up on providing liquidity and the different tricks of the game that you can do. I would be very curious.
Well, interesting nonetheless. Yeah. Just so we're seeing these moves go on. I mean, it's definitely, I think it just continues to be bullish that we are seeing, large wallets within the ecosystem making moves and things like that.
Sure.
So we'll continue to monitor it, see what it is they're testing out. But I really wanted to get to this because this is a good conversation that we haven't really talked too much about. We were talking about it, you and me personally, last week. But incentive token has been like all the rage over this recent pump. I mean, it as well as PulseX, but especially incentive, mainly because it was butchered to absolute hell. Just pumped hardcore up to, I think it actually went to did it actually go to $4 or $5, or am I making that up? It's at about $2 right now.
Incentive?
Yeah, I feel like it.
Yeah,
I'm pretty certain it was at least over $4.
Yeah, it was $4.11, I believe.
Okay, so
almost $5.
Yeah.
Let me pull up that chart here real quick.
While you do that, though, yeah. So it has been absolutely flying. That followed up with, and this is always so interesting when these tweets come from Richard. But so incentive token just flew up there, and Richard tweeted. I wanted to find the actual bookmark tweet because it was pretty interesting. I have it here. But people that have already been talking about incentive tokens so much, and obviously people have been yield farming here and there, mainly with the PulseX pool over the last few weeks or months, really.
$4.25. It looks like. And did you see access through his 2 cents in there? Did you see that?
I did not.
He said, probably pumping the volume up and shaking down any last bits of lettuce. Always wanted that wallet to appear as though it was a trader on deck screener with the intent to be a net buyer.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, kind of just seeing what was there. Just a little tester to see see what they could do, and
What happens when that happens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. Richard's tweet on the incentive token, and thanks for that, Axis. He said up 50% today and 7x in 12 days, but I didn't talk about it. Inc, the incentive token. It's very interesting, and here's why. It looks like half of its only $70 million market cap is in PulseX liquidity pairs with PulseX and Pulse. It's minted only by PulseX farmers. The only people that hold it farmed it or got it from someone who did. The chart kind of looks like leverage on Pulse and PulseX, which I thought that last part was pretty funny for him to say. And it marked right around the local top anyway for incentive and everything really at that time. So, these Richard tweets are always, I've said it before, but it's like, when you're younger, or maybe I'm just talking about myself, but like you discover Pink Floyd, or for me personally, it was Tool eventually. And I'm like, decoding the lyrics and what does this really mean, and I'm like, wow, this is genius and all this stuff. I like deciphering Richard's tweets and the meaning behind them. But is he telling people is he recommending, what is he, is he saying that incentive token is something to buy, or is he just trying to incentivize people more so to liquidity provide? And then we saw now this could just because of the way the market's going, but we did see the APY for the PulseX and Pulse pool go up a few days after that. But what did you feel about his tweet? Because there's a lot of things to get leverage on Pulse right now. We know that, and we've talked about them on the show. Incentive is an interesting one because you can get it for free basically by liquidity providing. You don't have to buy it. But what did you make of his tweet on it?
Well, the thing that I took from it was to obviously not buy it. He said, I didn't say to buy it. And, he made that clear. But to provide liquidity, again, the people that have it have earned it. And I think what he was maybe recommending was to pair it with some Pulse to leverage the movement of that chain. This one has a lot less liquidity. And I think kind of maybe that's what he was doing, was to try and help increase the liquidity a little bit between PulseChain and incentive to help kind of hold that price up, because the liquidity is fairly thin. These pumps are going to happen drastically whenever PulseChain goes up in price. When it has a pullback, it didn't seem to affect. I mean, it did. Obviously, it went from 425. We touched down to $1.60, $1.62. So, that's a considerable pullback. But I took it as just that, use the liquidity pair. I forget what the APY on that pair, that farm is, but it's fairly high. And, I think incentive could probably run the hardest out of most, well, maybe not most coins, but it could be one or two as far as the gains that it does on this chain. So that's what I took it as. I took it as more of a play on, earn it first and then provide liquidity with PulseChain and incentive, or PulseX and incentive to get the double whammy factor, because maybe there's more magic carpet rides to come, kind of thing.
Maybe. To that point, and talking about liquidity providing, which we really haven't talked about too much on this show, and there's a lot of different pools that you can get into on PulseX. Which ones are you interested in, Ewok? I mean, I already know the answer to this, but what do you not recommend, but what would you personally only be interested in providing liquidity for, assuming that you feel like you have enough tokens that you don't mind kind of locking them up like that together, out of the different ones that are on PulseX? Because again, we did see the APYs go up. And anytime this happens, an incentive token goes up, it's a lot different when you're earning like 50 cents on incentive token, or even less than that, to I mean, it was $80 at the beginning at the launch of this thing,
Yeah.
which is just totally insane to think of now.
88,
But yeah,
I think.
yeah. So like, what are you in favor of providing liquidity for, and what do you think are some best practices for doing so?
Well, if you're talking PulseX, I prefer, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I prefer the PulseX pair. Only because I don't mind which one of those I end up with more of. If there is some impermanent loss, um, I'm not going to be upset that I end up with a little bit more of the other token. The problem with providing liquidity that you have to be careful of is when it's with a stable coin and your main token goes up in value and your stable coin, isn't going to, it's always going to be at $1. So what happens is you end up with way more of that stable coin than you do the original coin that you put in the first place. That's where your impermanent loss really hurts. For example, when you supply liquidity, you have to put an identical amount on each side, right? So let's just use Hex for example. If you're going to put in $100 of USD, you have to put in $100 of Hex, which at this point, let's just, for the sake of making it easy, say it's at a penny, you would put what, 10,000 Hex in for your $100 of USD. Now, as the price of Hex goes up, it's got to balance it. So you may end up with $200 of USD, but you're only going to have 5,000 of your Hex. So it auto balances the whole way if you provide liquidity in that sense. So, you've got to be very careful when you pair it with a stable coin, because that's what can really happen. And then you have a lot less of your Hex. Now, it's very good when the price comes back down. So you end up with a lot more of the coin that you like, but the value of it's going down. So you have to be careful. Now, one of the cool things that is out there, and this is kind of veering off the topic, not really topic, but the question, the PH system, they have multi-coin pools of liquidity. So you can enter a hexahedron type pool where you're putting in 25% of Hex, 25% of PHEX, 25% Hedron, and 25% Icosa, for example. That may not be the right ratios, but you're spreading it across and still earning the fees that way. It all self-balances. So, again, if you like all of those coins, it's a better kind of thing to get into, because as it rebalances, you're not going to be terribly upset when they all rise together, pretty much, because they're tied together. But again, if you're a fan of all the tokens, that's a possibility as well. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I would just be very, very cautious on a bull run of pairing anything with a stable token, unless you really know what you're doing, because quite often, if you're not paying attention to it and rebalancing and rebuying with your fees, you could get easily left behind.
Yeah, that's a dangerous one. Yeah, especially with these violent moves up and everything. But long story short, I mean, yeah, you're in favor of at least doing the Pulse and PulseX pool. And that's, also, yeah, you want both tokens. You know that they're linked together and going to go up. But I think you also, in some ways, hope that they stay kind of within the range that they've been in ratio wise, which they basically have. I mean, this run
Yes.
up by PulseX when everything went up is the closest it's kind of closed the gap on Pulse. But we've seen it from 1 to 2.5 to like 1 to almost 4 at its worst. Pulse against PulseX. But it has stayed within that range. So it's up to whoever's comfortable doing it. And obviously, when you're done providing liquidity, you can pull it out at any time. It's not like there's a locked period you have to live up to or anything
Right.
like that.
Right.
And you don't have to do it for your whole stack necessarily either. So I think it's to each his own. Keep in mind, I mean, the real gains are going to be just from these things going up in price.
Sure.
But you also, it's fun to think about, like, where could the ink token, incentive token be eventually price wise if you've been earning that those rewards from it all this way. So
Yeah, and not selling them and not dumping them. I'll give you
yeah.
an example of kind of what happened to me when I entered liquidity. Let's say for every 10 pulse that I entered into liquidity, I think I had to put 27 PulseX in. And at one point, it had moved up to where I had only 8 pulse and 300 PulseX. But it has since balanced itself back out now to where it was originally. So it does move up and down, back and forth. But again, if you're in it long term enough, and you don't care which one you end up with a little bit more of, it all works out, and you're yielding all of that incentive as well, which you can in turn create another pair. If you think, like I do, that the incentive token is going to go up in value, it might not be a bad play to put a little bit in the side. You know what I mean? Just to
Mhm.
earn a little bit extra of that as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely another good opportunity. And, I think as over the last 6 months, people weren't really focused on it as much just because things were just so down and everybody was more focused on just acquiring the coins that they wanted to in this ecosystem. Now that we're moving back up, of course, and now that we're seeing the incentive token pump like that, people have some interest in liquidity providing again. So definitely another opportunity for you in this ecosystem. Speaking of PulseX, let's finally turn our attention to it. So this is kind of the main thing we wanted to talk about here tonight. And with how hard it has flown up with all these prices in this ecosystem over the last few weeks, it's an interesting thing. And the question that I started to ask myself is, will all the people that were hyping PulseX so ridiculously before the actual PulseChain launch be vindicated? They've just looked like shit now, basically, since since the launch of PulseChain. PulseX just kind of fell flat on its face. And it makes total sense. I mean, we talked about it with Axis on a stream before. You and I have talked about it. It really is just a math equation. 3 times the people, 3 times the money sacrificed for PulseX tokens than they did for PulseChain. So I mean, that's kind of where we've seen the ratio go. And as PulseChain has moved down, PulseX moved down with it. So the price of it bottomed out, and then as we see the market come back and get hot again, PulseX seems to move a lot. And I think I think there's a lot of reasons why, but I think part of it is also people have been underrating that buy and burn function, that no other DEX really has that fee switch turned on. It is really used, like Uniswap could be doing that. They don't do it. PulseX is built to actually do it. People were upset when the price was down, of course, that there wasn't single-sided staking and what's the point of PulseX and all these things. And I think we're now seeing that when this ecosystem runs up, we are going to see PulseX run really, really hard. There were people calling for, I mean, this isn't just PulseX, but 10,000x, 14,000x for PulseX. I don't know by what year they may have meant, but we were seeing that prior to the launch of this ecosystem. I doubt that that's in the cards, but it could rival. Could it? I would ask you, Ewok, and could it rival Pulse and continue to kind of close the gap ratio wise here? Just with the buy and burn function, people may be realizing the value of this DEX compared to really any other one in crypto or in DeFi. We've seen that ratio close. Do you think that it could get even tighter? And do you think that PulseX is the best opportunity in this ecosystem for this bull market?
with the buy and burn, I think it's quite possible. I, which one's going to run the most? I still think it could be incentive, but
Bottom to top, yeah.
yeah, from bottom to top, but only I we know how they're bonded, right? I mean, they're all going to run. They're all when these things get decide to go. Now, I just did a little moon math here to get double the sack price, to get to the 3 zeros and a 2. That's a 2,192%. So, what is that? That's freaking 21x from the bottom. And I think we're talking like double that to 0.4. That could be like a 50x maybe. Once this buy and burn really kicks in, and once the volume picks up, I think people are going to understand the buy and burn a little bit more once they see how much of it's disappearing every day. We've gotten to the point now where 677 billion, 3.3% of the total supply of this thing is gone forever. And that's only been what, 8 months? Right? 8 months. Yeah, I think this is very undervalued. When the people were talking that early, the problem was they said it would do it right away. And I think that's where a lot of people were like, you were so wrong about the predictions, but not everybody figured in the amount of people that were looking to get out so early, and it took so long to launch. It just didn't come into play into the conversation because we were focused on the buy and burn. But yeah, I mean, this thing could really run. Now, I don't know how the ratios will stay. I think they're going to stay pretty close. I really think it's going to, 1 to 2.5 ish is what we'll see, only for the first couple years. As things get separated out, people sell large chunks of some of the major investors that we have. We know that who was it? Rockham had a ton, billions, like 500 billion at least of I forget whether it was Pulse or PulseX. We know that wallet's been selling a little bit. So there are still some major players out there that need to lose some of their coins, whether they have a boating accident and get rid of them somehow, or whatever it may be. It's going to take a couple years, but I still think the layer one will have the best overall long term. But by the end of this first cycle, I think PulseX could do a little bit better, only because it went so low.
Yeah. Yeah, when you dip that far, I mean, it lost to 0. I mean, it had 5 zeros in front of it there for a period. So, yeah, I think so. But I do think the behavior that we just saw with this crazy pump the last couple of weeks is exactly what we're going to see every time this ecosystem pumps. I think PulseX is just going to absolutely rip every single time. We're now at almost 3.3%, I think, of the tokens being burnt forever. And that's in 8 months. And at the presumably the lowest volume that we're going to see this cycle. So, boy, I mean, just to continue to see that and to think of where I think with PulseX, something that people, many people have said, and I agree with too, is like the real intrigue is 2 cycles down the road. I mean, because it is the buy and burn function and the volume on the DEX, I mean, that is really when it gets intriguing. Does that equate to a 10,000 or 14,000x? I would assume not. I'm certainly not going to plan for it, but I definitely think over like an 8-year span, I think we could see some insane gains from PulseX.
Well, remember, Pulse is a fork of Ethereum. Richard's very smart when he designs things. He puts a lot of thought into the tokenomics, the game theory, the things like that. So far, a lot of things have mirrored. When you look back at the history of Ethereum in the early days, as far as what happened then, and you kind of compare it to the chart on Pulse, it's eerily similar. Other than the supply. But the price, also started a lot different too. I think Ethereum started at like 30 cents, for example. So, on a different scale, but like I said, eerily similar when you compare the two as far as the history of the first 8 months go for each of them. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm just super amped for it, and I think most people. I mean, if you were holding Pulse and PulseX kind of equally, which I would like to say that most people probably were, but I don't think many people were. I think a lot of people gave up on PulseX over the last few months. I basically kind of kept them 1-to-1. So if you did that, this recent pump, your PulseX bags probably are outnumbering your Pulse bags pretty well in USD at the moment anyway. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to keep them uniform and play it like that. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah, Corey Tate, Metcalf's Law for PulseX for sure. Yeah, but I'm super amped about it. I don't know that the people that were having these crazy opinions about it before PulseChain launch will be totally vindicated, but I think that we're going to see that, as it usually happens, like the candles paint people's emotions and everybody's shit all over PulseX at the lows. And now, it's, oh, okay, yeah, wow, this buy and burn really is cool and everything. But yeah, do you think the narrative of the buy and burn and the actual physical buying and burning, could make something like, oh, we never got single-sided staking or whatever? Do you think that will just fall by the wayside? Because yeah, I don't think we'll hear really a peep about that as the bull market really comes in. I mean, I don't think we'll hear people talking about that anymore, like single-sided staking and stuff.
I think there's still people that are upset that it's not there. Will they complain if the price is going up? Probably not.
A lot of them will probably still complain. A lot of
Yeah,
people have
well,
stand.
yeah, I mean, there's people going to complain no matter what. And I think you and I were talking about this the other day, that the people that are miserable really want other people to be miserable too. And that's what they do. They go online and they misery loves company. So I think there will be, but I think there'll be less of it as the markets get exciting. As far as developer work, like, I don't know. I haven't really been following to see what could be added. If my opinion, though, at just without, and I haven't been thinking about it, but I think the time to add the single-sided staking would be a little bit later in the bull market.
Yep.
You're going to want things tied up and locked up. We've already got a lot of Pulse locked up by the validators with over 50,000 validators, 32 million of those each. So you figure that's already locked up. We just don't have any mechanism to lock up the PulseX, really. I mean, I know there's some staking pools and things like that, but they don't really lock it up as far as time goes. So I think the perfect time would be as the market gets more exciting, as it heats up. You want some of that to come off to help it run. I think it would also help it run because if they're pulling it out of liquidity and doing the single-sided staking, it's not available. Now, you would almost have to put some sort of time on it to where you couldn't get in and out whenever you wanted without penalty. I think that would add a little bit of extra game theory. Maybe that's what they're working on. Like I said, I haven't been following the devs too much on what kind of additions are being worked on in the GitHub or GitLab or whatever it is. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, either way, I do agree with you there. Yeah. Why not introduce it later when, people can really react to it when the market's really back? I'm with you 100%. It's funny, actually, I was just looking at the poll that we posted tonight. What are you buying on this PulseChain dip? The options were PulseChain, PulseX, Hex, and some kind of leverage on Pulse. PulseX actually leads the way with 50% of the vote, which is pretty funny. But like, after it pumps the hardest is when everybody is buying it, not insulting anybody or anything like that. But it is funny that people are loading up after it kind of just ran really hard. But yeah, it tells you what's going on anyway. So
yeah,
good stuff for sure.
And that's one of the things that I recommended against last week was switching your position. At this point of the game, it's really not good. If you're gonna play with something, I would highly recommend fresh capital. Don't switch out of a position that you're already in for trying to play a ratio game. It's just not worth it at this point when you could very easily hurt your average buy-in cost.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to be playing with ratios now. Some people, hey, if you're comfortable doing that, that's totally fine. But I would much rather, like you just said, Ewok, put fresh capital in on any moves I want to make. So great stuff. Super bullish, obviously, on PulseX. Really excited about it. And I think at least now we've seen the narrative change around it and people are not really worried about it anymore, obviously.
Yeah.
So we've been wanting to talk about this for a couple of weeks, one element of this anyway. And that is to round off the show here. We're in a bull market now. I mean, we are in the early stages of it. There's going to be pullbacks and stuff like that, but we are seeing scam behavior just left and right, more prevalent than I have ever seen. I don't know about you, Ewok, but whether it's the ads on a lot of these crypto YouTube channels, including our own, or different things on Twitter, I see stuff that is like so clearly a scam ad, and it's an ad on Twitter. It's not like just an account; it's literally an ad. That is just crazy. First, before we talk about those, though, just the other day, we had a person try to access the PulseChain bridge simply by Googling it and clicking on a link, and apparently lost $20,000 in the process.
Yep.
Some kind of a fake bridge site for PulseChain. This isn't unique to PulseChain. This happens with any, DEX, bridge, whatever, of any prominent chain, since the beginning of time, really, in crypto. But yeah, it sucks for that person. We're not here to obviously dunk on anybody, but to highlight it and talk about like best practices. And, one of them would be not Googling for some of these things, like not, and I don't know how you maybe would screw that up, I guess, anyway, but like not just Googling for Uniswap, not Googling if you're going to use them, but not Googling for PulseX or something like that, or the bridge.
Or MetaMask.
Yeah, definitely. And instead going to like the main Twitter account, following the link from there. For PulseChain, just simply typing in pulsechain.com and bookmarking that, because within that site you have the links to everything in the ecosystem, basically. So yeah, first we'll just talk about best practices for like these dApps, apps, different things, bridges that you're using within crypto, PulseChain or whatever else. But what are some best practices you walk to make sure that you are accessing what you really want to be? Because all it takes is, and I don't want to make people paranoid, because I know it's easy to do this when you're being your own bank like this, but it can take one click of a button, and if you've got everything concentrated in one wallet or something like that, you could be in big trouble. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the longer you're in crypto, the more comfortable you get, the more lackadaisical. You want to definitely, if you're going to a new site, especially, for most of us, we have our bookmarks saved that we use and don't venture out by just typing things in or searching on Google. I'll tell you what happened. Somebody went in to Google, searched for PulseChain Bridge, and the first one that came up was a scam. The second one that came up was legitimate. The third one was legitimate. And the fourth one was a scam. So you had, out of the top four, half of them were scam links by simply somebody knowing what they're doing with the SEO, the search engine optimization. They got it up there to the top of the list, and took advantage of it. And somebody clicked it. When they approved the transaction was more of a spend option than anything. And I think they only tried to bridge a little bit over, but because they signed the transaction that gave them permission to spend money from the wallet, it cleared them out. They were just going to do a test transaction of like $75 to see if it worked. But unfortunately, cleared out their whole wallet. So some of the things that you can do, yes, go to the original site. PulseChain.com is very easy to remember. PulseX.com is very easy to remember. You're going to get the links from those sites if you don't have them bookmarked already. Double verify it by somebody, find another link that's the same from somebody reputable. Even saying that, it's hard to say, well, if I'm just starting out, who do I know who's reputable? It's one of the things where it's just very difficult to find out who you can trust and who you can't. That's why I would always go to the legitimate site first, and then try and verify it from a couple other things that prove that you're using the right one. I know for a while MetaMask.com was set up as a fake one when we all know that the real one is MetaMask.io. Something similar to that. They're just changing the extension on the web page, and fooling people. So very careful with that. Be very careful with ads. I know this is another one too. The YouTube ads that come up. We've had people come. We meant to talk about it a couple weeks ago, even on our videos.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have ads turned on. Please be careful, because half of them, YouTube doesn't pay attention. They don't care who pays for the ads. They'll play anything. So when you see a video of a replay of Richard Hart or something like that, saying, hey, send me a bunch of hex and I'll send you twice the amount back. That's a popular one. There's all kind of different. I've seen ones with Elon. I've seen ones with, famous people in a video, and they have it all highlighted on the sides where, it's a great deal or something like that. Anytime you see great deal, or I can't believe, here's a specific one on Twitter.
Yeah.
I can't believe no one's talking about this. And I immediately block that person. Like I get rid of, I haven't seen very many of them lately, because I went on a blocking spree, and anytime I saw that, I got rid of them. There's also a way that you can type in text, blocks. Like at one point there was something, and I can't even remember, it was a some MEV bot or something that they were advertising that was a scam. If you type in MEV bot in the words predictive, it won't show it to you. So it just gets rid of it. So that's a good thing too. There's lots of different ways that you can mitigate some of these. For me, I pay the extra $15 or $16 a month to YouTube. For the premium, I don't see ads. So, when you spend a lot of time on YouTube, it's almost worth it to pay that little bit of extra so that you don't have to watch the ads. For me, it's, I don't get to see a lot of these scammy things that are out there, because I just don't see them. So, we spend a lot of time on here, right? We spend a lot of time absorbing content and learning and listening and things like that. So do yourself a favor. If you've got the extra $15 a month to spend, you won't see the scammy ads either, and you won't have to listen to them. And, it's more video that you can watch.
Yeah, I want to make one clarification too. Like you said, we do have ads turned on and the channel's monetized, but I mean, that actually doesn't even necessarily matter for this stuff. Like your channel doesn't even have to be monetized for YouTube to, like, even YouTube can make money off you even if you aren't getting monetized yet. So you could have a channel that's not even monetized and they will still put ads at the beginning.
True.
Crypto related, they'll do that. And I will say, and again, I'm not like making fun of anybody necessarily, but if you guys have been around the block at all, or like are paying any attention, I think you right now anyway. I mean, I don't know where AI advancements will be 6 months even from now. But if you can't tell that, like, this Solana guy or the Brad Garlinghouse one, there's a Brian Armstrong one. I mean, it's insane how many people they're getting to. But I mean, they're pretty goddamn fake. I mean, it's very, very bad. I mean, like, they're incredibly monotone. They sound dumb. They're talking very slowly. Oh, there's a Michael Saylor one, of course. Those just seem very, very obvious. So, but yeah, anytime, you're not going to see anybody like that on an ad offering you anything. That's just not going to happen. It doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, I will say, in my younger days in crypto, you just talked about this a moment ago. Last bull cycle, they had all those streams going on where it was Elon, what's the Gilf's name? Kathy Wood, and Jack Dorsey, the old Twitter guy, I think is who would normally be on it. And it'd be those three, and it had the trick on there. It had like a banner, like it was live streaming everywhere, and it had a banner like send 2 ETH or send an ETH to this address and get 2 back. And it's like a live stream with 3 people who, like, you presumably like trust on it. It's like, are they endorsing this promotion. It's like, no, they have nothing to even do with this or even know that it's on the screen or anything. I thought those were somewhat effective at scamming people because it was
Sure.
like, oh, okay, if Elon and Kathy Wood, Gilf, and everybody's saying this, then why not? But man, some of these deepfake AIs are just terrible, I think, that I'm seeing on some of these channels. So just know this, because we got like a vitriolic comment one day. I was on a Sami video today, and somebody said something like, we have nothing to do with that. And anybody who's a creator on YouTube totally deserves to get paid by YouTube if they have an audience and is monetized. It's just up to YouTube. Now, I don't know how these entities can do all this legally. When you're deep faking somebody and claiming to be them, I don't even know how that works, or maybe it's just not worth it for those entities to go after those advertisers. But just know that if you're getting a crypto ad prior to a video right now, I would just err on the side that it's definitely a scam and you don't want to be paying any attention to it. So
yeah, just be very careful. Use extra caution. Like I said, bull market, it comes out of the woodworks and they'll get creative. They will get creative. We haven't seen, scammers, they get pretty crafty. So just double click. Something else to think about too is don't be afraid. Every once in a while, it's probably good habit to do it, to revoke permissions. It's something we don't talk about enough, but revoke.cash. I think GoPulse has.
They
do.
They have a link to it. Yeah, they have a page dedicated to it.
Yep, they have a revoke as well for PulseChain. As I think it's
okay.
Yeah, so you've got revoke.cash, and then go pulse here. Let me share this. If you go to Go Pulse and you go to here, let's go to the home page, go to apps, and it's down here at the bottom. It's revoke.
Yep.
And then all you do is connect your wallet, and you can remove. You can see what has permission to spend money and remove those permissions. Something good to do every once in a while. And like I said, revoke.cash. You may be able to even do this on both chains. I don't know if you're connecting your wallet. It may work. I haven't tried it yet, so I'm not sure.
I haven't done a revoke on PulseChain's side yet. And it's one of those things, it sucks because it's like, well, I don't want to pay gas on ETH, which sucks, just to revoke something, which,
you don't want to lose your bag either.
You don't want to lose your bag either, but also, gas Gwei is nothing right now. It's like bear market lows these last couple of evenings. So, if you want to go in and do that, do some spring cleaning, winter cleaning, whatever you want to call it, every now and then, just in case. Because if you've done like some of those unlimited spends or something like that on some of these sites, I luckily nothing ever happened to it to me. But one time there was a multi-chain.xyz, which was the popular bridge to bridge over to Phantom, which was a darling of the last bull cycle. But they had some kind of hack. I don't even know how long ago this was now, 6 to 12 months ago. And sure enough, I had a wallet that was still, nothing happened, but I went into revoke cash and made sure that I was disconnected from it after that, just in case. So, yeah, you never know.
And you don't have to spend gas to look and see what's connected. If you go in there and you only have 2 or 3 things, if you have the hex contract and you have maybe Uniswap or something like that, then, Hedron possibly and Communis, those will be fine. You wouldn't have to do anything. But if you see something out of the ordinary that may have something that you don't recognize, then I would definitely recommend it. May cost you a few bucks, and like you said, gas prices have been 8, 10, 15 tops last couple nights. So take advantage of it now while it's only a couple bucks, because I would hate to see you lose thousands because you're like, I don't want to spend a couple dollars.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely good to go in and do that every now and then for sure. And that is a good point, Ewok. You can see everything you're connected to first. So, something may be more of a concern to you than others. So, great place to end the show, though, I think. There's a really good one tonight. Really active chat. We appreciate all of you guys being here. Hit the like if you have not done so yet to support Real DeFi. We like to support everybody in this ecosystem. I've been watching a lot of Corey Costa recently. Matty Allen just started his stream probably almost an hour ago. A lot of people doing awesome stuff right now. And yeah, just support real DeFi everywhere you go. I don't even care if it's that you're supporting our channel. Just support this ecosystem because I think we're going to see it go crazy places in this bull cycle. So any last words from you tonight, Ewok?
No, man, just be careful. Eat up some of these last dips. Like I said, remember, long-term delayed gratification is still the way to go. I know we all want to get rich this cycle and you know, reap the benefits from the bull market, but just remember, it's still a long-term game. People that underestimate this community and the things that are being built are going to be sorely upset. I mean, we are seeing the gates come down a little bit, but it's going to take time, and just hang in there. It will definitely be worth it.
Yep, just stay here for the ride for sure. Yeah, and it's getting real good right now. So we really appreciate all of you guys here. We will see you next week. We do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for my co-host Crypto Ewok, this has been Broke Boi Crypto right here on the Creed of Crypto podcast. See you guys.